Okay, we are going live. And then Giulio, it's up to you to introduce, to give the floor to each one of us. If you like, I can be the first if you like, but it's up to you. Give the floor to each one of us to have a 10 minutes speech.
Okay.
Good.
There is some feedback, by the way, I'm picking up.
Yes.
Anyone else is hearing that?
Okay, yes. We are live on YouTube now, on the Space on Essence channel of YouTube. And now I will share the link to the Facebook group and to the event too. While I'm doing these things, I think each one can present himself in order to let people understand who we are. So I am Adriano Autino, the president of Space Renaissance International. And okay, the other ones.
So I'll start. My name is Giulio Prisco. I'm a writer specializing in science, technology, business of technology. And I have a special interest in things connected to both space and spirituality, so that I'm very happy to be here, where space and spirituality, the intersection of space and spirituality, is exactly what we are going to talk about. Cometan, you're next.
Yes, yes, my name's Cometan. I'm here in England today. I'm the founder of Astronism and the founder of the Astronist Institution, which are two connected but also distinct entities. I'm a graduate of religion and I'm currently studying for my PhD. And yeah, I'm just involved in space religion, space spirituality, and all related topics really on a daily basis. It's my vocation to engage in this topic. So yeah, that's pretty much me.
Thank you very much, Comit. And Steve Wolfe is next.
Hi, everyone. So Steve Wolfe here. I am the president and co-founder of a new organization called the Beyond Earth Institute. It is a policy think tank that is looking to, we have a goal of creating a policy framework that will enable human communities to be developed beyond Earth, essentially space settlement. And at some point I'll put the link to the website in the chat field for folks to check that out. I'm also the author of The Obligation. It's an exploration of space philosophy and why people are so passionate about space. And so I think very much like Giulio, I have a foot in sort of the real world of space and the exploration of what all this means from a spiritual standpoint. So looking forward to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Steve. And if I may add that I highly recommend Steve's book. Alberto Cavallo is next.
My name is Alberto Cavallo. I am one of the co-founders of Space Renaissance International with Adriano V. And I am an engineer, but professionally, I've never been involved into space. My interest is mainly from the philosophical point of view, and also in general as a, I would say, an enthusiast of the space expansion, even if it's not my profession, but that is my interest. From my deep personal interest.
Thank you very much, Alberto. Tsvi Bisk is next, and if I didn't pronounce your name correctly, please correct me.
You pronounced it perfectly. One of the few people who do. Okay, I guess I would call myself a futurist, but that would be too limited a definition of what interests me. What I will get into in my talk is just my entire life trying to answer the question, what does it all mean? You know, why is there anything at all rather than nothing? And of course, God doesn't answer that question, because then the question becomes, why is there a God rather than no God? So that's basically what I'll be talking about. And I got into what I'm about to talk about when I realized that the Hebrew word for God is a verb. It's not a noun. Yehovah means to become manifest. The burning bush, which is translated poorly as I am that I am, is really I will be what I will be. So even the concept of God, the intuition of ancient thinkers before it was turned into a cult by Jewish orthodoxy. I'm going to be very controversial here on that one. There was a certain instinct and intimation of a process.
If I can interrupt you, Tsvi, I think now we are just introducing ourselves.
Okay.
I have the impression that you.
Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. You will have all opportunities to start and finish your talk later. And I see that we have Paul Ziolo joining us from what look like not very comfortable conditions. I'm sorry to see that. Paul, and can you introduce yourself?
Yes, of course I can. Apologies, but I'm actually talking from my hospital bed. I won't be here forever, but I am here at the moment. My interest is in psychohistory, and I taught psychology and psychohistory at university for a number of years. I'm also a keen amateur astronomer. I also am affiliated with the Eastern Orthodox Church and have an interest in the Russian side of the space program, is particularly what is known as Russian Cosmodeism, the work of Fyodorov and his colleagues, our common duty, as it's called. And therefore, my chief interest here is psychology and the history of religion and how this will help us to achieve our own destiny. That's basically who I am.
Thank you very much, Paul. So, Adriano, do you want to go first?
Yes, we'll be happy to how they say, to break the ice. So I will use a presentation. So let me share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes,
okay.
we can.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. So I didn't say it before when I presented myself, but I think everybody knows that the Space Renaissance International will hold its third World Congress in June, from 26th of June to 30th of June. And of course, everyone is invited, warmly invited to participate and to present papers if you didn't yet. And we will have a very, very good discussion. We have already 70 papers, abstracts, and we have about 10 keynote speakers. And I think it will be a very, very, very interesting Congress. However, okay, let's go. My discourse on spirituality comes from my philosophy that I joined. Let me say, I joined this philosophy about 30 years ago, and is Astronautic Humanism. So it is Astronautic Humanism is a current of thought that belong with Konstantin Tsiolkovsky in at the end of the 19th century, when he say that Earth is the cradle of humanity, but one cannot live forever in a cradle. So okay, moving from that, many others came. Krafft-Erike was one, and others that thought about the future of men, of humankind in space, and why all the rationales that move us to go to space. So my view of spirituality is a social view and the rational view. So it's about different from a traditional religious view, because I am more in favor of science and rationality than in favor of beliefs and faith. However, I believe that religion can have also another meaning that is maybe the first meaning, that is unity. It doesn't need to involve an idea of God or of a superior entity. It means unity among people. So in my opinion, the spirituality is strictly linked to the concept of caring for the people, for all human beings and so on. So my presentation is made of 4 main parts: human needs and utopias, cosmogony and biology, evolution, a fully inclusive civilization, and moral, avoiding a giant holocaust. So starting with the first one, I start with Maslow because in my idea, Maslow is one of the most important philosophers in our culture, and he developed his personal psychological school that is alternative to Freud and to the other psychologists that founded their schools. And what I like to focus on is the relation among the scale of the needs, the hierarchic needs pyramid made by Maslow, and the social issues. So we have. So this is a little bit extended Maslow pyramid. The original one was made only by 6 levels, but someone more recently added transcendence as the 8th level, and also added cognitive level: knowledge, understanding, curiosity, exploration, and so on. So we can.
Who did that?
Sorry?
Who did that? Who added those 2 things?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't have the reference right now.
Okay.
Okay, I will look for that. However, so we can split the basic needs, the first basic needs, and the growth needs that pertain to the personal growth. And here on the left, we can see that the first 3 levels, biological and physiological, safety, and love and belongingness, were very much focused by the classist utopias, such as Marxism, most of all, that stressed the need to satisfy this kind of needs for all not quite all the human beings, but however the lower classes that they were adopted by the class movements. But if we look at the whole needs, we can see that these are needs that pertain to a humanist utopia, the space expansion, because expansion of civilization into space, it will be the only condition that will allow the realization of all of these needs. Because if we don't expand into space, we will not have the enough resources on the planet to allow 8 billion people and more to get all of this, to satisfy all of these needs. So I say that this is a humanist utopia for the space age that must include the complete satisfaction of all the needs schematized in Maslow's pyramid. Everyone must have the opportunity to become rich without this involving ever again theft, murder, exploitation, coercion, suppression of the rights of others. And all this for a virtually unlimited number of humans. So from each one according to their creativity and availability, to each one according to their desires and capacity of imagination, or humans do not live by bread alone, that this was said by the Christian ideas and ideology. That means that the superfluous is indispensable for us to live and to have a good existence. So these are the human types from the Stephen Wolfe book, The Obligation, published by Stephen in 2015. That I extended a little bit, because these are the basic types classified by Stephen in his book. I'm sure he will say more about that during his speech. So the wanderers or explorers, the settlers, the inventors, the designers, the builders, the protectors, the visionaries, and the evolutors. I added the philosophers, the thinkers, the searchers, the scientists, the artists, the teachers, the communicators, the organizers, and the mystics. So we have a huge number of different types, and for sure we have many others that are not classified, but we know that exist in the humanity. Then another philosopher, that is Howard Gardner. It's a psychologist. He's a psychologist. Classified the multiple intelligences: linguistic, logical, mathematical, musical, visual, spatial, bodily, kinesthetic, interpersonal, intrapersonal, naturalistic, existential. So let's just think about the combinations between these types and these types of intelligence. Let's think that each individual can have more than one characteristic in different percentage, different degrees. And we will have an idea about the very huge number of combinations and we will begin to understand that each individual is really unique and owns unique goals, wishes, aims, and capabilities. We also understand why demographic growth is indispensable. By population growing, human types further differentiate and grow up in number and cultural variety. Every human type, or almost every person, is characterized by personal inclinations, dreams, tendencies, and projects. In order to guarantee, sorry, I am muting who is not speaking. Please, when you will speak, unmute yourself. In order to guarantee the freedom of existential choice, it is necessary to move towards the abundance of space and resources in order to guarantee the freedom for everyone. So, astronautic humanism as a philosophy should comply to some basic requirements. It should have a compassion for all humans and all the other sentient beings. This comes from Buddhism, and I think it's very, very good principle and should be listed as the first one. Then it should be fully inclusive. All humans are resources and not problems. According to Julian Simon versus the horrible Thomas Malthus theory that humans are just mouths to be fed. It should cultivate intelligence and awareness, cultivate rationality and science as a method. Doesn't have to have dogmas. That dogmas are an undemonstrable concept that are assumed as a absolute truth. The only merit is intelligence and culture, and individuals get credit by their intelligence, awareness, and culture. 3 capacities that can be trained and empowered. That means that each one of us, we are responsible for our intelligence, awareness, and culture. Of course, we don't have any merit for the color of our skin, or if we are nice or not nice, or this kind of things that don't depend from our will. But we have a merit to be less or more intelligent, and to be aware of the human condition or not, and to have a good, at least we try to have a good culture, at least in the things that we choose as our interest and domain to be deepened. The human species do get credits by growing intelligence, awareness, and culture, 3 capacities that change the human DNA, becoming permanent. So why humanism? Because human species is the only one species that we know that developed intelligence and awareness and culture. A new yet original concept of religion. In order to guarantee the freedom of existential choice, it is necessary to move towards the abundance of space and resources. The equitable management of scarce resources has always been a harbinger of authoritarianism and the dictatorial bureaucracies. Civil, free, and democratic development requires abundance of resources. The ability to manage abundant resources is the real challenge of the future in the solar ecosystem. It is also clear that only unified efforts, and not just the inner individual transformation called by mystics, can achieve this goal. That's the highest social goal, expanding civilization into space. That's why big efforts motivated by shared ideals are necessary. That's why the space renaissance also needs a new concept of religion that is unifying efforts for a shared evolution goal. More, the expansionist strategies is the only one that doesn't need 100% consensus to be developed. All the ideologies developed so far in history have served as engines of development, but have generated conflicts and cultural distortions that are difficult to overcome. Are all ideologies therefore dangerous? We can say yes, because ideologies are engines, and all engines are dangerous. However, the expansionist strategy doesn't require 100% consensus, only requires that nobody hinders it. Unlike other strategies, for instance, the growth, it is the only one that can be developed in a democratic and free way without coercion or authoritarian regimes. Expansion is the only strategy that guarantees freedom and full fruitful use of all human types and all types of intelligence, and doesn't mortify any one of the human types. Of course, expansion in the solar system, it will not take away the ground to anybody, because there is nobody there. So, cosmogony and biology. Please, the moderator, tell me when I'm running out of time, that we try to go a bit quicker.
You know, I think you're running out of time now, but
now,
what you're saying is so interesting that I think we can give you other 5 minutes.
Okay.
Just go ahead, say all that you have to say, but try to make it short.
Great. So this is the solar system we learned at school. That is 8 planets with their perfect circular orbit, and a very small, almost invisible belt of asteroids. But this is the reality. So the belt of asteroids fill the whole space between Mars orbit and Jupiter orbit. And many asteroids and to go in the Trojans and Greeks, that are the Lagrange point between Jupiter and the Sun, where the attraction of Jupiter and the Sun is balanced. Sometime Jupiter strikes some of this by a flyby effect. Some of these asteroids are thrown inside the inner solar system, and they are the near-Earth asteroids. So what you see is that the solar system is all but a peaceful and well-sorted place. It's a very dangerous place. It is a boiling cauldron. Seeing from the point of view of the resources, we have exhausted the resources of this grain of sand in the ocean of the solar system. So this is Earth, and these are all the resources we have. And there are more resources outside in the Oort cloud, in the Kuiper belt, and in the Oort cloud. That's a giant snowball made of trillions of comets that have on board all what we need to develop trillions of human beings. So it's ice and water and carbon components and all what life need. So we see a similarity between the Greek mythology, where Jupiter was the father of the gods, and in our situation, Jupiter sometimes strikes to the inner solar system, and it seems that he wants to test if the intelligent life that was born inside will be able to manage these asteroids, or will be killed. So if we are matured enough to go ahead, or we are to be suppressed as a wrong experiment of nature. So, okay, this is exactly what I say now. However, we can see our solar system as almost an intelligent organism that remembers errors, corrects errors, and redraws the next experiments. For an updated philosophy, the asteroid belt holds resources for the development of 1 trillion citizens solar civilization. The Kuiper belt provides even more resources for millennia to come. The Oort cloud is a kind of giant freezer, as I said before. Why do we keep having troubles and being concerned about growing up into 9 or 10 billions? Once more, the Lord or the evolution or whatever else endowed us with enough resources to develop and multiply up to trillions of unique human individuals. Interesting for religious minds, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not be in want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, surely godness and love will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This is the Psalm 23 by David from the Holy Bible. Of course, it is up to our goodwill to reach the pastors where they are, using our intelligence and scientific capabilities. So this is the last analogy of the blooming of life and egg analogy. We can see a first egg having Earth as the nucleus, the near-Earth asteroids as the amniotic substance, and the Moon and the Lagrange point as the limit of this space. The same thing we can see enlarging our view to Jupiter, where the inner solar system is the internal nucleus. The asteroid belt is the amniotic liquid, and Jupiter and is Lagrange points are the
Excuse me, Adriano, I'd like to remind you of the time.
Yes, sure. Okay, the same thing I wanted to say about Oort. Going to the last part, evolution. Long history from primitive adoration of the sun to mature spirituality. This is human. and he doesn't know where he want to go. Someone said he have to go to be a god, a perfect and unreachable model. While humans are imperfect, bounded to earth, unable of initiative, and eternal child, we always needed someone or something else to control, feed, and bound us. Church, government, nature, in the place of God. In this model, all utopias so far were unfeasible. There we have a crisis of the old models, and we have new models provided by the same nihilist ideologies, degrowth, animalism, etc. The animals' natural ferocity, they kill, but they are innocent because they are not rational. The old models are challenged by the closet word nihilist syndrome. So our poor guy is quite confused. Humans shall be reduced in number. Murder is good. Technology is bad. We shall recover a natural status, blah, blah. Further decline of culture and rationality toward a quasi-animal status. So our poor child feels alone again. This is our status as a species. We are not going. We are not on a road from human to God. We are on a road from animal to humans. Maybe. This was the animal status. This is the animal 2.0 with spoken language. This is what we are now. We are still killing each other. We are still suppressing freedom. We are still having horrible behaviors. So we cannot say we are humans nowadays. We will maybe be humans in the solar system when we will have an enough platform to allow all of us to satisfy our Maslow needs and so on. And the civilization evolution, we have Nikolai Kardashev that classified 3 types of civilization. Type 1 using only the planet energy. Type 2 using solar system energy. Type 3 using our own galaxy energy. And Paul Ziolo, in his Psychohistory dissertation, discussed the probabilities that our civilization can move to type 2. It can be considered the true philosophical development of the Kardashev classification. We know that Kardashev was only a scientist. He was not a philosopher. He never wrote a book on his theory. He just made this classification scale, trying to understand if other civilization can exist in our galaxy. But other philosophers reflected on this, and Bob Zabrin added resources as evaluation criteria. So planet resources, solar system resources, galaxy resources. Carl Sagan added information, and we, in our Congress next June, will discuss the addition of 4 criteria. Social inclusion. A civilization can call itself a type 2 only when it will be able to assure equal opportunities to all of its members. Earthers can reach a totally inclusive society only expanding into outer space, harvesting the resources and energy of the solar system. Civilian space development is the 3rd millennium feasible utopia. I think I stop here. I stop here because I said the important things. The rest is just okay, moral, avoiding a giant Holocaust. You can, I think you can imagine what I was going to say. And okay, exploration of the solar system is a social objective, and that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Adriano. So if you guys don't mind, I will go next. I'll need to share my screen. Where am I here? Okay. Okay, do you guys see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. As I said, my name is Giulio Prisco, and I guess I'm not the only one. As a matter of fact, I think everyone has been watching the launch of SpaceX a couple of days ago. I'd like to point out that to me, and I think to many other space enthusiasts, the experience of watching a space launch feels somehow like attending a service in church. I'm sure this emotion is quite a familiar one, at least with the people that I can see. And I'm going to elaborate on all this. What do I mean by attending religious service at NASA TV? We're talking of spirituality and new or perhaps old cosmic religions. I'm going to define that. These cosmic religions are related to the space frontier in three different ways. They are inspired by the space frontier, so they come from the space frontier. These are religions for the space frontier, to motivate us, to give us the drive that we need to move upward on the road to the stars. And eventually, this new spirituality will lead us to the stars on the space frontier. And I want to emphasize that I'm not only talking of new forms of spirituality and religion, because exactly the same worldview can be extracted, I believe, from the old traditional religions that we are all familiar with. For example, Paul mentioned the rich tradition of Russian cosmism, which was, and I think Paul will correct me later if I'm wrong, which was an outgrowth of Russian Orthodoxy. I'm going to talk only for 12 or 13 minutes, but I have written a whole book about all this and other things as well. On my website, turingchurch.net, you can find links to Amazon if you want to read my book. But if you guys just send me a note, I will be happy to send a copy for you in Kindle format. And I look forward to your feedback on this. So we must go to the stars. I added it here before it's too late, but I'm not going to elaborate on this. You can all easily guess what I am referring to, be it asteroid impact, war, other extinction level event, pandemics. I'd like to include another danger, which is the danger of senility and ossification of our civilization, which would really prevent us from moving out there. Why? Why we must go to the stars? I'm going to give you my personal take on that, which is very much related to spirituality and religion. And there are many stories that I could tell. There are many parallel stories. I'm going to elaborate on one. So we will go to the stars. Sometimes in the future, I don't think in this century, perhaps in the next century, perhaps in a few centuries, I don't know, but eventually we will. And at some point, we will visit black holes. I think the nearest black hole is at about 1,000 light years from the Earth. So we will have a long way to go to get there. We need very good understanding of physics to visit a black hole. But once we have reached a black hole and we are able to do physical experiments near a black hole, we will be able to do experimental quantum gravity and perhaps eventually understand how different aspects of our scientific understanding of the world fit together. So we will need good physics to visit a black hole, but the output will be that we have much better physics. And then with much better physics, we will be able to visit perhaps even more exotic places in the universe. We will study even more exotic physics. We will do new experiments. We will achieve an even better understanding of our universe, and so on. The process could continue forever. And as a matter of fact, I think the process will continue forever. I don't really believe that we will find a finite theory of everything anytime soon, because I don't believe that such a thing exists. On the contrary, I think the pursuit of knowledge will never end. There is infinite knowledge ahead. You are all familiar, I guess, with the pictures that you see on the screen. It's a zoom in the Mandelbrot set. And you can zoom, and you can zoom, and you can zoom more. You can zoom forever, and you always see something new that you could not have predicted before. So the quest for knowledge will never end. We will never understand everything at a given time, but we will understand always more than our previous understanding, and we are able to understand everything that can be understood. And I could elaborate on this, but I think William Shakespeare said it much better. There are more things in heaven and earth that are contemplated in our philosophy, and this is really all that we can say at this moment. Future scientists will know more, but the quest for understanding reality will never end. And I'd like to share two quotes that I like very much. One comes from a historian of religion. The end point of engineering knowledge may be divine knowledge. The guy who said that is named Richard Bushman. And another is by, of course, Arthur C. Clarke, who remains one of my main intellectual mentors. He said, it may be that our role on this planet is not to worship God, but to create him. That's a beautiful one. And this is exactly what I want to move on. We have the beginning of all things, which in religious scriptures is often called Alpha. We have the end of all things, which is often called Omega. And these two seem two very different things. One is the beginning of all things, and the other is the end of all things. A man is here. We are here now. And a God is here in the Omega state. But what if Alpha and Omega are the same thing, or at least very strongly related to each other? What if? And Olaf Stapledon, another of my intellectual mentors, said this very well. Perhaps the ultimate flower is also the primal seed from which all sprang. Perhaps the final result of the cosmical process is the attainment of full cosmic consciousness, and yet, in some very queer way, what is attained in the end is also, from another point of view, the origin of all things. So to speak, a God who created all things in the beginning is himself created by all things in the end. And this comes very close to my personal philosophy, metaphysics, and religion. Let me go back to the concept of self-consistent loops in time. If you think that reality is, that reality basically consists of events in the past and the future that self-actualize each other in a self-consistent way, you can see that God perhaps is something that exists in the future in one sense, but in another sense is able to influence things in the physical universe, also here and now. Reflect on this is a very beautiful concept. So, human space exploration, I think perhaps, as Frank White pointed out, is something that must inevitably happen because the universe is done this way. There is something in the structure of the fabric of reality itself that is pushing us from the oceans of the Earth through the Earth itself, through the galaxies out there. And I think this will happen. If you can read the text here, this is a picture from a talk that I gave a few years ago. If you cannot read, I will. We will go to the stars and find gods, build gods, become gods, and resurrect the dead from the past with advanced science, space-time engineering, and time magic. God is emerging from the community of advanced forms of life and civilizations in the universe, and able to influence space-time events anywhere, anytime, including here and now. God elevates love and compassion to the status of fundamental forces, key drivers for the evolution of the universe. And this is really a good, compact expression of my personal belief, my personal philosophical and metaphysical convention, which I call my religious belief. So that this is the end point. This is what we are going to do out there in space. This is why we must expand beyond the Earth. And beginning to expand into space is the most important task of humanity at this moment in history. So let's just fucking go, if you excuse my French. We are crew members of Spaceship Earth, which I consider a very good metaphor. And of course, if we want our spaceship to continue to work and to continue to fly toward the stars, we must take good care of the spaceship itself and its crew. And this, I think, is the link between our enthusiasm for spaceflight and other important problems here on Earth, like the protection of the environment and the quest for social justice. And these important things are not against the spirit of spaceflight, but on the contrary, they can, and I think they should, be seen as parts of the same cultural package that we should continue to promote. I'm going to elaborate on all that in my next books. One is called Yet Another Spaceflight Manifesto, and I plan to finish the draft in a few weeks. Another will be called the more metaphysics, the more future-oriented part is going to be called Astounding Universe, Amazing Grace. I think you catch both the reference to science fiction and the religion, and it's going to be ready in draft forms in 2022. Now, for my books, I don't rely on traditional publishers because I don't want anyone to change what I want to say. But after finishing a draft and before publishing a book, I usually invite a few friends to join me for a revision, to mercilessly criticize what I said, and to help me make the book better. And I'd like to invite all of you to join me in this exercise. If you want to participate, just drop me a note. So I think I have taken the time that I had, so that I'll stop here. Which window do I have? What happened here? One moment. Okay. No, I just lost. Here it is. I had lost the Zoom screen. Okay, I managed to switch the screen share off. Now let's think who comes next. I was thinking that Paul is in a condition where he could be interrupted any moment. So perhaps, do you want to go next, Paul? If you want to go next, you should switch your microphone on.
Unmute.
Yes.
Unmute.
Yes.
Can you now hear me?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Unlike yourselves, I've been unable to prepare a PowerPoint presentation. So you'll have to put up with my words and my discussions for now, because basically I haven't been in a very stable position over the last few weeks. But when my paper is published, I think things will become clearer. First of all, Giulio, I would like to thank you for your citation of the Olaf Stapledon, who is significant here because Olaf lectured in psychology and philosophy in my own department here in Liverpool. And in fact, in our library, we have a special science fiction archive, which contains what we call the Stapledon Archive, which contains his manuscripts and sketches of the future.
Whoa.
So, in fact, Liverpool has more of a input into the distant future than people might assume. We are not just the Beatles, we are something else as well. But anyhow, I'll just, in the time I have here, will explain to you briefly that how I came to take an interest in the Space Renaissance Initiative. I have always considered life to be a property of the cosmos itself, an endemic quality of the cosmos itself. If I were to argue for the existence of life on other worlds, I would say that I had a long period of study of deep structure, ultrastructure, that is to say, the structure of the very small. René Thom's work on catastrophe theory and transversality in particular were influential when I was a young student. And basically, when I look at the universe that we see, the known universe, we see that the same laws that govern the evolution of life on Earth and ultrastructure itself apply also in the distant universe, from which I conclude that it is likely that life is, in fact, is a behavioral state of matter in the universe itself, and that, in fact, we are one of many races in the universe who have a potential cosmic destiny. What this destiny is, we can't be sure, we don't know, but we can probably postulate that our destiny and that of other races in the universe are bound up with the universe itself. And I would prefer, I think, in all humility, to not postulate about what any final ends are, but to say that at the moment we have the deep need to make the transition to space, after which time our knowledge will, as you have said, expand infinitely. It's, I am, as a psychologist, concerned above all with the things that threaten us and possibly inhibit our expansion, because I deeply appreciate Maslow and the work of Gardner too, but I remain in a sense a Freudian, and the Freudian outlook is not at all incompatible with the older Christian level of anthropology, especially in the Eastern Church, especially the philosophical outlook of the Byzantines, such as Maximus the Confessor, which in a sense, this is a line of thought, of cosmic thought, that has come through to Russian cosmism in the present. It's the East too, what we might call Eastern Europe. The Slavic world also has this transcendent cosmic vision of what life may be. Now, you may be aware that there is an institute in Britain called the Institute for the Future of Humanity. And in this, certain scholars there, including Robin Hanson, the economist, and others, have postulated something called a great filter. A great filter meaning barriers that intelligent life must transcend if it is to reach a galactic status or a spacefaring status. Basically, this was introduced as an argument in relation to Enrico Fermi's statement that if the universe contains intelligent beings, where are they? We don't see them. Well, there are a number of reasons for this, apart from the fact that we, as a species, are still very primitive and still don't have a real grasp of space, time, and energy and the real size of the universe itself. I mean, when we think, when Adriano mentioned the Oort cloud, I was thinking of the fact that the Voyager probe has just about touched the Oort cloud. And we claim that Voyager has entered intergalactic space or interstellar space, but in fact, it has to transverse the Oort cloud to leave our solar system properly, since the Oort cloud is part of the formation of the solar system itself. However, it will take around 17,000 years for that probe to cross the Oort cloud, and another 45,000 years at its present velocity to reach our nearest stellar neighbor, Proxima Centauri. So we are thinking of really vast scales here that really challenge us. And we, in our spiritual quest, need to look at what we are and how we can develop the capacities, both cognitive, perceptual, and emotional, to meet the sheer vastness of the enterprise that we're undertaking. I, as a psychohistorian, look to history to look at the history of the human species and how transformations have happened. And I have always been fascinated by the story of the Benedictine transformation at the end of the collapse of the Roman Empire, by the Cistercian Reformation of the 12th century, by the work of the Jesuits in particular. In other words, what I call orders, that is, orders committed to the betterment of humanity as a whole, at the expense of their own private wishes and desires. This is a theme, not, we might say monks, but monks and nuns with whom I have been closely involved in my life. I have a great aunt who was a Carmelite nun. I've know many of the monastic orders have had a great influence in the formation of my thesis. It's when Benedict abandoned his studies in Rome because he saw that basically the future of the empire was negative, that there was no real way in which the Roman Empire could be resuscitated. He didn't make a statement that he was founding a new civilization, but he knew that renewal of the heart, renewal of psychology has to precede the renewal of a civilization. I believe that our current civilization is not capable of establishing a space-going culture, but the next cycle will be the cycle that establishes a space-going culture. We consider what you have said so far and what Adriano has said so far. These ideals are very powerful, and they demand this revolution of the human psyche. And above all, it demands that we face the evolutionary prescriptives that have so far gripped us and prevented us from reaching what we desire. We are able to formulate our utopias, but we perform and commit holocausts. I have spent some time in researching the Holocaust because of my own background as a child of a survivor, you might say. And I remember that, you know, in Treblinka, in the monument at Treblinka, the words "never again will we perpetuate such horrors." This was basically something that happened only 5 years before I was actually born. That's not long ago. And the fact is that since then, we have had genocidal behaviors and atrocities committed constantly in different places in the world. So we are not out of this yet. We are still in that rather savage intermediate stage that you pointed out, Giulio. You know, that intermediate stage of humanity where we still are dominated by evolutionary drives. The monastics of the past, if we read their literature, understand their literature, they are challenging the very prescriptives and evolutionary drives that prevent us from developing as a species. They would practice what they called poverty, chastity, and obedience, which are set in opposition to sex, aggression, and sex, greed, and power, which are the main driving forces in human societies. I have always thought that today, if we were to seek renewal, it is not necessarily the old patterns of quest for virtue, but psychological transformations, whereas we take the evolutionary drives and transform them. It's called in evolution exaptation. You take a drive or force which is within us in evolution, part of our evolutionary growth, and transform it and direct it to an end. For instance, lust or sexuality can become universal compassion. A driving curiosity can become what we might call a consummate perspicacity, an enlargement of our cognitive and emotional powers. And we should also seek a steadfast dedication to the principles that we hold. This steadfast dedication is very hard in the face of a world which is constantly transforming, challenging, and changing us. I believe that the great filter that Hansen and his colleagues have pointed out lies before us, not past. The opinion of Oxford is that we have passed the great filter somehow in overcoming the various stages leading to intelligent life. But I believe that these stages are ubiquitous in the universe. Every species that emerges from a planetary cradle has had to overcome its primitive biological nature. And this is exactly what we too also face and must overcome as well. So I call this process of transformation the Sigma calculus, which is essentially systems of training which are based on the wisdom and practice of past disciplines and are taken in, whether they are Christian anthropological, whether they are Eastern Orthodox, whether they are Buddhist. They are part and parcel of our ability to take what is currently evil, you might say, and transform it. For instance, the way to look at emotion can be either positive or negative. It can also be strong or weak. It can be trained to move towards the positive, and the various drives that limit what we are can, in fact, be overcome in community. A community whose nature, I don't know what that would be yet. Maybe it may well be the SRI. It may well be part and parcel of other communities that are associated and affiliate with us. But one thing we cannot really do, I don't believe, is trust the civilian, political, and military infrastructure of the world to bring about our space
Renaissance. It has to come from within. It has to come from outside. It has to be inclusive in a way that it never has been before. I found that I attended the 100-year Starship program at Houston recently, which was 4 years of conferences, which were absolutely splendid. The best conferences I've heard so far. Not like my professional psychology conferences, we're all talking shop. This is one where we all had to listen to extremely challenging ideas from a large variety of disciplines. Not that I could claim to understand some of the astrophysics that I heard, but I understand more now than I did then, and had an idea that this approach in these conferences was something approaching what we're looking for, something that we could all share, a vision we could all share. So basically, ultimately, I'm saying that that we are challenged by this filter, this great filter which lies in front of us, the ability to get to space. Unless we are able to establish a firm foothold in space as soon as possible, we'd run the risk of facing what's called a systems collapse, in which any recovery in the future may be seriously compromised by key resource depletion. We are turning our potential Starship material into smartphones. That's what we're using all our resources for, smartphones, not spaceships, you see. It reminds me of a demonstration I remember in the 1970s when Apollo was in its height, and my head was full of dreams of the stars, and the hippies were demonstrating outside. Make friendships, not spaceships, right? And indeed, this is the sort of thing that's happening in a way. So it's the question of how the great filter can be bypassed. It's a major thing, a major issue that we face, that very often when we discuss about the technologies we need and about the economic infrastructure that we need, we're neglectful of the fact that our drives may inhibit us from getting where we need to go. Now, basically, therefore, I speak, and the paper I offer in the future will be about the nature of what I call deontic orders. The word deontic is a Kantian term, meaning obligation or duty. Fyodorov's key paper, when he wrote his key paper, was Our Common Duty, right? It's the title, Nasze общее дело, right? In Russian, Our Common Duty. And in this, he envisioned something called apokatastasis. We've got lots of Greek words in the Eastern Church, which meant the resurrection and fulfillment of all life that's in the cosmos. This enormous expansion is really a potent idea. But first of all, we have to seek about how we ourselves can overcome the passions and drives that threaten to separate us and threaten to, for instance, as I always said in those conferences in Houston, to dissipate and to degenerate and to disintegrate the very principles that we came to uphold in those conferences, because that's what in fact happened. You see, the ideas were beautiful, but the cells that were created in those conferences did not survive. They basically, disintegrated due to internal politics, due to the advent of Trump and what happened in America. These things are part of the chaos that is part of the fall. I've often mentioned that I read Asimov's Foundation when I was a young man, and this was very, very key to the whole space mission, because in a sense, we are facing a very similar situation now, where we are facing a fall of an empire and need to create a new one. Unless we do create a new one, we risk falling into an indeterminate period of barbarism. And the key to doing this is to unite two sides of human action, scientific and cognitive, and emotional and spiritual. In other words, the psychological and the scientific, the first and second foundations. And what is actually interesting here is I believe that Asimov's vision is less dependent on Gibbon's History of the Roman Empire than it is on Joachim of Fiore's vision of the 12th century, where he sets out Joachim was a Cistercian abbot and visionary who set out a complete plan of the future of 3 ages and 2 orders. This is one of the things where the space program is endemic in our history, our entire human history. What has come together from the vision of Maximus Confessor to the prophecies of Joachim. The prophecies of Joachim were disseminated by the Franciscan friars and became part of Europe's philosophy of history.
Excuse me, Paul.
Yes.
I'd like to remind you of the time and ask you to accelerate toward the end because we have 4 more speakers ahead.
Yes, that's quite correct. And I would like at this point to take my leave and thank you all for your attention. I think I've delivered the basic idea behind what I'm doing. So thank you once for your attention. Let's pass to the next speaker by all means.
Thank you very much, Paul. And I do look very much forward to reading your paper. Now, I'd like to give the floor to Tsvi, if you're ready.
Okay. I also don't have a presentation. I'm going to read my paper. First of all, I differentiate between. Do you hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay. We do. I differentiate between a small r religiosity and the big R religion business, what we would call the legacy religions, the orthodoxies. And in that context, I often say that the most religious person of the 20th century was a gentleman called Albert Einstein. And I will get to Sagan's famous quote about religion based on science later on. What does it all mean is the fundamental question of the human condition. When the first human beings stood up on their hind legs and looked at the stars and said, what the F is all this about? That is the beginning of all religion, all science, all philosophy, all art, all entrepreneurship. Human beings trying to make cosmos out of chaos of existence. That is why we created God. God is made in our image. We're not made in his image. The modern dilemma is that we're finding it increasingly difficult to rationalize our own existence and the subsequent feeling that all is purposelessness. Pascal anticipated this 300 and some years ago when he wrote, "When I consider the brief span of my life absorbed into the eternity which precedes and which will succeed it, the small space I occupy and which I see swallowed up in the infinite immensity of spaces of which I know nothing and which know nothing of me, I take fright and am amazed to see myself here rather than there. There is no reason for me to be here rather than there, now rather than then. Who put me here? By whose command and act were this place and time allotted to me?" What that says to me is that the existential challenges of angst and anxiety that modernity has exacerbated, there's always been angst and anxiety. Modernity did not create angst and anxiety. We need a believable metaphysics in order to answer this existential question. And here we have to debunk the non-overlapping magisteria thesis of Gould, who says that, religion and science are totally separate magisteria. You could include philosophy in that. And when thinking about that, I observe that today, neither Spinoza or Descartes could be published in any peer-reviewed journal because the editors would write back, are you dealing in philosophy? Are you dealing in theology? Are you dealing in science? And no, they were dealing in thinking, good old-fashioned thinking, and the academic tendency to divide things into different departments for the convenience of tenure and other things is a sign of, I call it a desiccation, a drying up of the human spirit. So I want to do what Einstein called a thought experiment. which I call the Cosmodeistic hypothesis. And this hypothesis says that the Big Bang that created our cosmos was a local event in an infinite universe, a universe that contains an infinite number of cosmoses, what we now call the multiverse. Our cosmos is therefore, by definition, an evolutionary entity in a perpetual process of growing complexity, which has eventually produced conscious life. Now, I want to refer back to classical religions, even though I said something a bit negative about them at the outset. I mentioned in my introduction of who I am that the Hebrew word for God is a verb, which is anticipating God. And in the biblical Hebrew, it's in the imperfect, which is really interesting to describe the perfect being in the imperfect. And in modern Hebrew, it's in the future, what God will be. It's a evolutionary process. But to take the Christian belief, we could say that in terms of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, the Father is infinite nature. The Son is our cosmos, and the Holy Ghost is evolution. And that might be some kind of theological adaptation that Monday might be considered. So I believe that the evolutionary nature of cosmic development, and here I'm agreeing with almost everybody who preceded me, it is statistically certain that untold numbers of conscious life forms equivalent in self-awareness to human beings, and the thing is what I call self-reflective intelligence, because the higher animals have intelligence. I mean, intelligence and self-reflectiveness and self-consciousness is also an evolutionary. We're not, human beings are not a virgin birth. I mean, if you've ever owned a dog or a pet and you looked into its eyes, you know that there's something there. You know, it's not, we're not a virgin birth. We come from something. Equivalent and self-awareness have arisen throughout the cosmos. It's as if conscious life has been sown as a cosmic genome by the very process of cosmic evolution. A very, very small percentage, but large in number of these conscious civilizations have or will eventually expand throughout their own solar systems and eventually achieve interstellar capabilities. In doing so, they will have had to achieve new levels of consciousness. Here, I disagree with the previous speaker, Paul, that we have to reform ourselves first before we can do it. I think there's a dialectic that the technological challenges create a higher level of consciousness, which enable the technological challenges to expand, which then create a higher level of challenges, and so on until infinity. And I would call this a supra-consciousness, what Nietzsche might have called the overman, or the supraman, not the superman, the supraman. And following that, evolution will produce a supra-supra consciousness, and then a supra-supra-supra consciousness, until a consciousness will have been created that will appear to us as if it were a God, a universal being. And this is, I call, and this is a term that was made familiar to me by a good friend of mine, Stephen Ornstein, the Godding of the Cosmos, in which he introduced me to a book by Rabbi Cooper, which pointed out that the Hebrew word for God is a verb. That Yehovah means to become manifest. And what is translated as I am that I am in the Bible is, in modern Hebrew, I will be what I will be. Ehiyeh asher ehiyeh. In other words, conscious life forms will eventually succeed in transcending their bodies by scientific and technical means, thus isolating and enhancing the most essential part of their humanness, their consciousness. They will in effect to become pure consciousness, or if you will, pure spirit, expanding throughout the cosmos. Arthur Clarke in 2001, A Space Odyssey, anticipated this, what he wrote, quote, Evolution was driving towards new goals. The first had long since come to the limits of flesh and blood. As soon as their machines were better than their bodies, it was time to move. First their brains, and then their thoughts alone, they transformed into shining new homes of metal and plastic. In these they roamed the stars. They no longer built spaceships. They were spaceships. But the age of machine entities swiftly passed. What is swiftly in cosmic time could mean hundreds of millions of years, of course. In their ceaseless experimenting, their conscious life, they had learned to store knowledge in the structure of space itself and to preserve their thoughts for eternity in frozen lattices of light. They could become creatures of radiation, free at last from the tyranny of matter. Into pure energy, therefore, they presently transform themselves. You mentioned Stapleton, one of the prophets. Science fiction has to be taken seriously. I think science fiction is in a way the science fiction of ideas, which is Stapleton and Clarke and a few others, is a new kind of theological speculations of what could be. Consciousness will become one with the cosmos that is dissolved into pure radiation. Cosmos will become in its entirety a conscious universal being, i.e., the cosmos will have become God. Cosmodeism posits God as the consequence of the cosmos and not its cause. Not in the beginning God created the cosmos, but in the end, the evolving cosmos will have created God. Space-age spirituality, in my humble opinion, will consist of meditating on the mystery of existence itself, of why there is something rather than nothing at all, and to take joy in the fact that we are alive and that our purpose is to be a bridge to this cosmic future. Now, theses of God as the consequence rather than the cause of the cosmos, it's not something new. I didn't invent it. The 20th century British Jewish philosopher Samuel Alexander from Manchester University championed this view. The Jesuit theologian philosopher Teilhard de Chardin, which Giulio referenced indirectly, presented the idiosyncratic view that God was both the cause and the consequence, the alpha and omega of cosmic existence and evolution. He saw the end of history as pure consciousness becoming one with the alpha God to create the omega God. The Italian architect philosopher Paolo Soleri, influenced by Desjardins, described how human technology would enable conscious life to evolve into God. Dr. Ted Chu, in his extraordinary book, Human Purpose and Transhuman Potential, A Cosmic Vision for Our Future Evolution, argued that humanity, and I quote, is not the pinnacle of evolution, but instead is a critical phase in an all-encompassing cosmic evolution which can be understood as God in the making, close quote. He calls this development the cosmic being, or Kobe. Modern German literature and philosophy is rife with the human ambition to be godlike. Robert Tucker points out in his book, Philosophy and Myth and Karl Marx, I quote, the movement of thought from Kant to Hegel revolved in a fundamental sense around the idea of man's self-realization as a godlike being, or alternatively as God, close quote. What attracted Marx to Hegel and the use of his philosophy as his own philosophical infrastructure was that, and I quote again, he found in Hegel the idea that man is God. History for Hegel was God realizing itself through the vehicle of man. And this is the underlying implication of all Enlightenment thought. When we say, what will history say about us? We are really substituting history for God. Nietzsche's Overman as a bridge to the future. Carl Becker, in his book, The Heavenly City of the 18th Century Philosophers, claimed that the Enlightenment was simply a secularization of the search for the Godhead. Enlightenment thinkers called it natural law and wanted to place political organization on it. This has been the subtext of all Western political theory from Hobbes onward. How to create political cosmos out of political chaos. How to be godlike in terms of our own human society. It's a secular hubris that appalls fundamentalist religions across the globe, but which is essential to the identity of Western civilization. This is a neo-teleological worldview that reflects the philosophical outlook of emergentism, which is based on evolution as the grand paradigm of existence. It reflects Roger Penrose's intuition that the universe has a purpose. It's not somehow just there by chance, and tries to fulfill Carl Sagan's wish for the emergence of a science-based religion, something that might be necessary condition for humanity to build an extraterrestrial civilization. And here, this is in agreement with what Paul said. In other words, create this first as part of its next evolutionary advance. Sagan wrote, "A religion old or new that stressed the magnificence of the universe as revealed by modern science might be able to draw forth reserves of reverence and awe hardly tapped by the conventional faiths." And I think that is the challenge of Space Renaissance and all the other initiatives that we've been talking about here. And I did it within 10 minutes, I think. So.
Thank you very much. Tsvi, can I just ask you when your book will come out? I see that you're writing one. You are muted. You are muted.
Hopefully,
right.
I'll finish it before I die, but I
hope so too.
I'm shooting for July, actually. I'm pretty much advanced.
That's great. I look forward to reading it.
It's called Cosmodeism, a worldview for the space age.
Great. We all look forward to reading it.
Yeah, and it also talks about social problems too. There's anyway.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'll follow the order.
I have to leave. I'm sorry. I had previous arrangement, and I really wish I could stay with you folks. But I'll see it on YouTube, right?
Thank you very much, and we all look forward to seeing you soon again.
Thank you, Tsvi. We will meet again. Okay. Thank you very much.
So I'd like to continue in the order that I see people on the screen. So I'd like to ask Cometan to speak next.
Okay, thank you. Just 1 second. Can you see my screen now? Share. Okay.
Okay.
Can you see my screen yet?
Yes, we can.
Okay, brilliant. Yes, thank you, Giulio, for introducing me today. And it's been a great conversation so far. I've really enjoyed listening to it. Hopefully I'll be able to contribute something to what's already been said. But today, really, I'm kind of just focusing on the practical side and more of the identity-based issues really today, rather than sort of a deep dive into Astronism, which is what I normally do in these types of lectures. So yes, today my lecture is titled The Astronist Identity, and essentially what I'm going to be speaking about in fairly brief terms is what it means to identify as an astronist, and why I think that cosmocentric thinkers such as ourselves, we should unite under an identity. Adriano referenced this a little bit in his lecture just earlier. and also what the term vicinalism means, and all these new words that emerge from my writings. But essentially, I'm Cometan, a British philosopher and academic, aspiring academic. I'm a lecturer as well. I am currently conducting my PhD research at the University of Central Lancashire on human rights and freedom of religion or belief. So I'm working with people at the United Nations, a great group of people who are helping me to develop a new approach really to freedom of religion, and hopefully doing some really good work there. But also the other side of what I do, and maybe the main side of my academic career, is I'm the founder of Astronism and the Astronist Institution, and I founded Astronism at the age of 15. I'm 22 now. And you can see there on the left-hand side, that's my latest book that has just been published. It is an extensive dictionary of over 9,000 terms that encompass astronism and what that word means and what that word entails. So of course I can't go through everything today at all. There's too much really to be able to do that. But what I hope to really do today is try and really define what it means to be astronist. But just before I do that, we're actually coming towards an end of an era really for me and the astronist community that I've established, because on my 23rd birthday, that will mark 8 years since I founded Astronism. And really we see now we're moving into a new era, which is what we call the establishment era, or the establishment of Astronism, which essentially means that now that we've got a philosophy more coherently established, we now want to be able to sort of disseminate this and also organize it and let it interact with other existing philosophies out there. The previous speaker was talking about his own philosophy, so it would be something like that, being able to interact between these simultaneous movements essentially. So that's how we see the next maybe 10 years or so playing out for our community of astronists. But what essentially is astronism? Well, it means to think and act cosmocentrically, which is essentially to act in a way that places outer space at the center, and also to think in a way that places outer space at the center of thought and action. And so therefore an astronist is a person who regards cosmocentrism as their worldview. Last year, I did a lot of work on what I call the Astronic tradition, which is the lineage really of astronomical religions and beliefs stretching back to 40,000 BCE. I became an archaeologist for a short period last summer, trying to gather together all the brilliant specimen that had an astronomical theme and were clearly created with reference to the stars and related phenomena, and it stretched back to the Upper Paleolithic period of the Stone Age. And I really see astronism and all the work that you were all doing as well as part of this astronic tradition. That's how I see it. And those who are familiar with religion and the study of religion, you'll notice that what I'm trying to do here is create a separate tradition distinct from Abrahamic, Dharmic, and Chinese religions, in order to really define astronomical traditions of religion from all other aspects. The Astronist Institution is a denomination of astronism, and it's a particular interpretation of astronism, I would say, as well. It's an organized version. It's essentially everything that I do. So all the websites that I run, all the lectures that I give are done under this brand really of Astronist Institution. And really, yeah, the institution represents the astronist community of cosmocentric thinkers, essentially. That is my master's dissertation, which is all about the Astronic tradition and where all this came from, and looking at the origins of religion, which is another area of study that I am very, very interested in contributing to. So if you want to take a look at that, you can do, of course. So the reason why I'm focusing on cosmocentrism is because I think it has a really powerful unifying property for all of us that we've been talking today. All the themes that we've been talking about center on this idea of space and space expansion and exploration being core to the human continuance. I think that's one principle that we can all agree upon. I really do see as still a little bit as an outsider from this community of people. I do see it as still quite dispersed and quite fragmented. There's a lot of people with their own ideas, with their own organizations, and that's great. I don't want to try and, homogenize everything and make it all under one, but I do think we need more unity in our message, and also more distinction between ourselves and other groups, which I think is a really important thing to try and achieve. I see my role really, and my future really, as trying to establish this type of unity, and also, if I fail in this endeavor, at least I know I've tried. I wanted to get that in there as well, because all I can do is try and do this, and whether people will accept that is up to them. Yes, like I just said, we need to preserve the diversity of thought that exists in our community of thinkers. But I think we should do it under the auspices of a singular uniting identity that may have many denominations, many forms, many manifestations, just like other movements have many denominations within them. And of course, I think that should come under the auspices of Astronism. I'll tell you why a little bit later on. And yeah, so preserve this diversity of thought because it's important to our continuance as a movement. If we don't have this diversity, then we're just going to fizzle out, to me. A lot has been said about what Astronism is. A lot has been talked about with regards to it being a religion, a philosophy, a belief system. And these designations do capture aspects of Astronism, but they don't capture all of it. And one of these words does not capture all aspects of Astronist belief. And so what I want to, the work that I feel is most important to me next is trying to really establish a new type of belief system, what I call astroncy. I've highlighted it there on the screen. This would be a type of belief system that would sit alongside religion, philosophy, spirituality, but it would be space themed. It would be what we call transcension themed, which is an astronist term for essentially what you guys have been speaking about today, transcending to the astronomical world. So my activities at the moment are in trying to develop this new type of belief system that then I think Astronism will be able to sit within and really be able to accurately sit within as well, because I don't think Astronism is just a religion, and it's not just a philosophy, because it has both religious and philosophical, spiritual aspects. So what do I mean by this unity that I keep talking about? Well, what I mean by that is identifying as Astronists going forward and this is part of my activities, is trying to get people to really identify with this word Astronism, because I think it's a strong word. I think it's definitive. I think it's also distinct from other movements as well. And also part of this is what I call coming into vicinality with the Astronist institution. and I will explain what that means in a moment. A related term to that is vicinalization, with these great new terms for you to think about. This unity or this unification is not going to come about immediately. I understand that. It will take time, but I think it needs to take place in order for the practical manifestation of all of our ideas. I think that we have to unite in order for these brilliant ideas that we have and brilliant tradition of thought that we have, in order for that to manifest in the world as a distinct community. So the word vicinalism or vicinality comes from the adjective vicinal, which means neighboring or adjacent to. So essentially what it means is neighboring to the institution or neighboring to the Astronist institution. And it can be, in a way, compared to the Christian concept of communion, different groups, different denominations coming together as under consensus, not all agreeing all the time on every single topic, but having that sense of unity under some really fundamental principles, like cosmocentrism, like, having outer space at the center of our thought and practice. And obviously a main stipulation of this process I see is using the identifiers Astronism and Astronist. Adriano spoke a little bit about his philosophy, which is called Astronautic Humanism. I do have a problem with the word humanism. I do think, as a scholar of religion and just looking at how humanism and humanist is being used as an identifier in contemporary times, I do think that it doesn't exactly align with what we as a community think, the way we think. I know humanists who very much, of course, they're opposed to religion, of course, but they are really, some of them are not interested in space, and they don't see space as the future. They don't see space as important. And so I do see our sort of community and our group of thinkers as really distinct from them. So I'm calling for really, of course, Adriano, you can still use astronautic humanism, but I think you're getting mixed up with a community who may not really share some of your ideals regarding space, possibly in other aspects, the rationality, rationalism, and focus on humanity. But in terms of the space renaissance and in terms of outer space expansion and the importance of outer space, I don't really see that happening in other aspects of the humanist movement. Maybe you do, and that's fine. We can have a discussion about that. But this is why I'm trying to advocate for the use of Astronism and Astronist, just to really define who we are as a community and define who we are as thinkers from the humanists. These are just a list of some practical implications of what I call vicinality, coming into communion essentially with the Astronist institution. Some implications mean, more internal private communications between us as, more often, more coordination in the public messaging that we do, just trying essentially to bring us together organizationally and somewhat intellectually as well. This part of my presentation is more geared towards Adriano, perhaps, because I've spoken to him already about an Astronist institution and Space Renaissance merger. At the Astronist institution, we see our strategy as robust, dynamic, versatile, and youthful. I see my role really as trying to get the youth on our side, trying to get the youth interested in space, I think there's a huge misunderstanding among the youth with regards to space. There's a huge lack of understanding of space and its importance, really. There's very few, what I see, especially in the UK, classes that really focus on space and as the future of humanity, to me. And this is what we're trying to promote, of course. You know, we're on social media, we do marketing and branding, and you know, I'm an important part of that brand, you know, doing lectures and things all the time, but we use Astronism as our brand essentially to get our ideas out there. And we run really not as a business, but as an organization, just as any other religious organization runs. You know, we have to have a strategy, and we have to have you know, logos and you know, engagements all the time. And this is nothing new to Adriano, of course, in his activities. But yeah, that's just the Astronist Institution and what we do. Just as I'm coming towards the end now, the Space Renaissance Manifesto of 2014 that I was reading recently, or rereading again, I was looking at some of the requirements for the space age philosophy. These are 4 main ones, but then there's a further 15 requirements. I feel that Astronism really does fulfill all 15 and more. I feel it goes beyond just these requirements, and I feel, you know, that my work and my dedication to this cause since I was 15 years old, you know, I feel like I'm best positioned to try and help in any way that I can, really. So just operationally, what this type of merger may look like is Astronist Institution deals with philosophical, spiritual and religious issues.
Excuse me, Cometan, since we are running short of time, can I ask you to accelerate?
Yeah, of course.
Thank you very much.
I'm almost finished now. I'm almost finished. And then obviously Space Renaissance, I think, could deal with the practical execution of space exploration. The Astronist Institution, we don't have the time to really get involved in, unfortunately, the practical elements, the technological and engineering side of space exploration, because most of our time is made up of managing astronism and all that entails. But yeah, this is just a proposal. This is just something to think about. And I'm sure that Adriano and I will have more conversations, hopefully in the near future, about how we can merge together, both organizationally and intellectually. And yeah, I thank you for listening today. And I hope that you'll have a little look into what Astronism is and what we do and what we believe. But thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much, Cometan. That was quite stimulating. Can I ask you to stop sharing your screen, please?
Yes, I will.
And now I'd like to give the floor to Steve Wolfe.
Oops.
Just, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you again. Steve, the floor is yours.
Yes, hi. Hey, this has been an incredible day here. I've been taking incredible notes, and I could just listen to you all speak. You know, I almost don't want to speak because there's so much good stuff going on. Cometan, I have to say that this, I would love to know your story. What happened to you at the age 15 that exploded your mind and opened this possibility of this religion to you? Like you, I have to say that my journey began at age 15 as well, where it actually was the exposure to the high frontier and Jerry O'Neill idea of human colonies in space that suddenly that woke me up quite literally, and launched me on a lifetime path of interest and activity and activism that you know, brings me to a ripe old age of 60 something, where I'm continuing to do this probably, hopefully another 20 or 30 years, as we all will on this journey. We clearly are all of like-minded. And hopefully Adriana will have a chance to go a little bit over time, as I want to hear everything that Alberto has prepared as well. As I see we creep up to the 1 o'clock hour Eastern time. You know, over the years, to this point, over the years, when I've talked to people, I've always asked them, you know, what was it that got you interested and passionate about space? And typically they would point to the Apollo landing, or watching Star Trek, or reading Robert Heinlein, and reading a book that sparked their interest. And what occurred to me is that and I prefer to say that this passion for space travel was already present in the individual, and that the exposure to that book or film or NASA mission served as a catalyst to awaken a part of them that was already there, and then inspired them to pursue a career in space. This is what I call the evolutionary impulse, right? We've been talking a lot about evolution, right, as part of this process that we're on. So it's an evolutionary impulse to expand life beyond Earth. And I think a couple of people have mentioned this, that there is this existing impulse that existed prior to our technological age, you know, maybe, and I'd say goes back to the very dawn of the human species, if not earlier. This impulse is an ancient source of global tension that won't be satisfied until we have fully established ourselves as permanent sustained branches of civilization beyond Earth. And then and again, just spinning on what has been said, I think that evolutionary impulse will sort of morph into something else. You know, what is that next evolutionary stage of consciousness? So this is what I call this an obligation. And there was somebody else that mentioned that actually in some text that I wasn't familiar with, which I want to pursue. I think what Paul had mentioned it. I see this as an obligation. This is my book is called The Obligation, and that is that we have an obligation to expand beyond this planet. There's a lot of stuff there. It's in my book, but what I do want to talk about in the few minutes that I have is this idea as a topic. I want to discuss the potential of spiritual practice to inspire greater support for space exploration and settlement. So we talked about this idea of consciousness, and that we are on this path of consciousness, and higher states of consciousness seems to be clearly related to our desire and success in expanding beyond Earth. So when we talk about spirituality, just in the broadest sense, right, it's usually associated with the transcendent states of consciousness or higher consciousness. Most spiritual traditions instruct on how to achieve higher consciousness, which is in many traditions, that's the goal, right? We want to get to nirvana. And it happens a deep prayer, reciting a mantra, being mindful of your breath, right? These are techniques that relate to meditative practice. Meditation enables the practitioner to let go, right? Let go of your thoughts and your emotions, to get beyond them. And to do so, we know is even briefly can have tremendous value in the person's life. So the sustained experience of pure consciousness, right? Experience of pure consciousness through meditation, beyond thought and emotion, that's where spiritual action really is. That is when you can access what's called the ground of being. You have a sense that all is one, right? You've heard these terms. We are all one. So there's no separation between you and me, right? No separation between myself and the universe. And this is an awakening experience. In this awakened experience, if you can get there, right? And in this state is the potential for all kinds of insights to be revealed. And with respect to the history of religious development or spiritual development, I think, and even to Cometan's point that this goes back 10,000 years, and I'm a little surprised to hear that, but I'm maybe not surprised. You know, how does this relate space, this awakened condition. So quite a lot. The awakened consciousness, right, is one that easily accepts the potential for human expansion into space. Because from that awakened perspective, our everyday world is no different from any other place in the universe, right? So why do we limit ourselves to just one location? So, in some ways, it's sort of a natural process, isn't it? So we, the sages, the prophets, and so forth, attain these, and it's cross traditions, certainly Judeo-Christian cultures, the Buddhist traditions, right? Christ himself. We talk in the New Testament. We talk about heaven on earth, or heaven beyond earth. Certainly the hell realm. Christ himself ascends into heaven. So, and really, without really making any judgments on these religions, the point here is that they evoke a sense of awe through the sense that the world and the universe is much larger than the single planet, the single location where we live now, and that is something that I think us who are trying to recognize the spiritual dimension of space expansion, we can tap into that potentially to really bring more people potentially into this fold. So, you know, we know that the Buddhists obviously have a very detailed cosmology where they have stories as going back as far as the 6th century BC of monks traveling to other worlds and meeting giant beings there. So, you know, maybe this is the first science fiction, you know, but there is this sense through this transcendent experience that that these other worlds exist, whether it was through the mind's eye, whether these were actual events. In some ways, it's not really all that important. But what does that mean for space activism right now, you know, today? And that's what's most important. So first, we may be able to, you know, it's possible that we could develop space activism from folks that are already in the ranks of spiritual seekers, right? So these folks are already kind of exploring through deep meditation and so forth the possibilities. Now, I think the challenge there is a lot of the folks that are attracted to spiritual practice right now are those that are most interested in improving the human condition or protecting the earth, you know, or interested in environmental matters. But I think there's potential there that we can pursue collectively. The other opportunity is to invite people from the space sector to start a meditative practice and seek this experience of higher consciousness. Now, the challenge is, of course, the people who are working in the space field tend to be very, you know, left brain, very very math, you know, very straight oriented, don't tend to gravitate towards this. However, you know, and maybe even 10 years ago, such a notion is crazy and unusual. But we are, you know, but meditation, as we know, has had a transformation in recent years in terms of wellness and health. And we are understanding that a meditation practice can have all sorts of positive health effects. So the idea of meditation is not as unusual as it was even just a short time ago. So if we can do this, you know, what happens, you know, if we can do this? So a meditative practice which strengthens a resolve, right? Through meditation, it allows folks to go beyond the negative thoughts and emotions that hold us back, and maybe we don't listen so much to the negative voices that say, well, you know, the space thing, what are you talking about with the space settlement? It's kind of crazy. Through meditation, we can move past that noise. We can recognize within ourselves that this path is incredibly important, and I need not to listen to that noise, whether it's in my own head or it's from somebody outside of my head. Secondly, you know, I think that we awaken the awakened space advocate has access to creative energy, right? So when you're sitting in the ground of being, it creates opportunity. So in ancient time, the prophets received messages. That's how they talk about it. But for everyday people, for the rest of us, it's really an opportunity for us to receive that which we kind of need to understand or know. In the most basic level, it's helping us solve problems of the day, so we're more likely tapping into our subconscious. It's helping us work through issues, but it also can give us ideas to move forward. So and this this is certainly so these are certainly it's certainly my experience, I should say. So in meditation, frequently and it's not anything unusual or special. It's just that you come out of meditation or through the process of meditation, in that quietness of quieting the mind, these ideas come to you. And so, and I will even just take the additional step that it was the additional statement that it was on a spiritual retreat where I'd been meditating for several days. It was the germ or the essential idea for my book, The Obligation, first came to me, and then I evolved and developed that over several years and for it to produce the book. So, in closing, I would just say, and I'm not sure if this is a part of Astronism or other things, but I think that in general, folks should consider, anyone listening to this program, certainly if you're a space enthusiast, I consider taking up a meditative practice if you aren't already. And I'm sure this expansive experience will greatly improve your commitment to expanding life beyond Earth. And with that, I'll thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Steve. Very inspiring. And I'd like now to give the floor to the last speaker, who is Alberto Cavallo.
Thank you, Giulio. I would like to speak about what are the foundations of the spirituality in general, what are the common things, and how spirituality can unite people instead of dividing them. The first thing for me is about finding the common grounds for everybody and uniting people and not finding what divides. And because sometimes spirituality has been used, the religion mostly, for this, while it's not true in the end. Of course, we must rely on what is common to everybody. That means is present in all traditions and must be present also in all philosophical views and all the new philosophical views we want to introduce. The traditional discourse is mainly about the past traditions, but of course we are introducing also new ones. But there are the main points. What are the main points of spirituality that unite everybody? Essentially, it's about what that all sentient beings want to be happy and don't want to suffer. And this is the basic of everything. And then, so the main values, what are the main values? The main values is what is called the general benevolence. It means that we want to all the sentient beings to be happy. We don't want, with compassion, that is about, we don't want all the sentient beings to suffer. So, and this is present in all religious traditions and all spiritual traditions, and also in all good philosophies. This is the point that unites everything, and is the point that must be introduced everywhere, and also starting from education of children. This is a very important point. I'm stressing the points that, frankly speaking, I have taken from the recent discourses of the Dalai Lama. And he's stressing very much about these things. Because what the source of all bad things is selfishness, is egoism. And the source of every good thing is altruism. is caring for others. Caring for others is because if we concentrate on ourselves, if we concentrate also not only on our person, but also in our family, our group, our nation, our party, then we create division and we create all that doesn't work in the world, in the community of all human beings, and not only human beings, of course, extend to everybody. On the other hand, this must be based not on faith or some personal convictions or some personal philosophical vision, but only on these essential points, and on reason and on personal thinking. That means, because if we think, if we analyze all the problems, we will see that we go to these main points: being altruistic, not being egoistic. And here, then, this is something. What is the relation with space? It's about this. On one side, we must concentrate on this as a general issue, because if we don't take care about this, also expansion into space will not be enough. Because on the other side, it's true that for what is happening practically now on this planet, as Adriano underlines very much, and all the others also, the resources of this planet are limited and we are exhausting them. So in order to live better everybody and to ensure a good life to everybody, we must expand into space. But this is not enough. If we don't take care of spiritual values, we risk expanding into space and bring all our problems with us. So what I fear is that someday we will have wars on the resources of the moon. It's not. I'm absolutely not convinced that it's enough. Of course, very abundant resources, yes, but there will also always be people concentrating on themselves, concentrating on their groups, on their nations, and they will find the way of making war on the resources of the moon or anything. So that's why we have to be very, very careful about this. Also expanding into space. On the other side, expanding into space is necessary because we need the resources. It's a practical point of view. It's not. I think the most important thing about spirituality is the first part, and the expansion into space is a practical part. It's very important, but we need both. We cannot stop on the practical things. But the other practical thing is that in order to be happy, we have to take care about our development, our spiritual development. I would also add, of course, another interesting topic is that not only be limited to human beings, of course. Here on the Earth, we have other sentient beings, and I'm not sure. And there are indications also from scientific research that there are other species that have culture, and there are other species who communicate. I mean, essentially the marine mammals. I think there are very interesting resources. What they don't have is material culture, but they have a spiritual culture. It's very, very much possible. But apart from this, someday we will find other beings in the space, in outer space, because other being it's absolutely stupid to think that we are the only sentient beings in the world, in the universe, on this tiny speck of dust that is in this side of the universe. Of course, there will be other sentient beings. How we will deal with them? What is our relation to them? It must be based on what is common to everybody, and then there is this universal value that is seeking for happiness and not and avoiding suffering. This is the main point for everybody, and it will be true also for all the other beings we will meet in the universe. Sooner or later we'll meet them, and sooner or later we have to deal with them. but also other points. For instance, machine intelligence, of course, maybe someday we will have a sentient machine. Why not? And also we must include them in our ethic view. In any case, ethic views must be based on thinking, on reason, and not on faith, because otherwise they have a very weak basis. Our general vision must be based on reason and on thinking, not on believing in something because someone said something or something is written in a book. We must use our own intelligence, and this is I think I'm just very much inspired by the message of the Dalai Lama. By the way, he also reminded us about one thing: if we destroy this earth, we will go and live in some other place. He's saying this almost in his quote. Because I just want to end with this conception, because this is quite different from others, but in the Buddhist conception, we exist from time without a beginning, and we will exist for time without an end, even beyond the beginning and the end of the universes. And the Buddhist thing, you can find this in Buddhist thinking starting from 3,000 years ago. I think this is the last part of the message. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Alberto. I'll now give the floor back to Adriano, but I'll have to go in a couple of minutes. So I just want to say thank you very much for this very interesting conversation, and I look forward to talking to you soon, as soon as possible.
Thank you very much, Giulio, for your excellent conduction. And yes, we are more than 2 hours now, so we don't have any more space for more conversation. I just owe a couple of very, very short answer to Cometan and to Alberto on two concepts that are similar, are connecting one each other. So the first one is about astronautic humanism, and the fact that many self-calling humanists don't believe in a space expansion. I think this is not a reason to stop calling ourselves humanists, because I maintain, and I'm sure of that we astronautic humanists are the true humanists, because the rest of the self-calling humanists seems not to be concerned at all about the giant holocaust that we are facing if the world should remain closed. Because if we don't, Stephen Hawking said that this planet will not support more than 1 billion people within the end of this century. And Stephen Hawking was not at all space renaissance, nor astronist, nor anything. He was a thinker, a clear thinker. This is okay. We could say the same thing with respect to the word, the term ecologist. We at Space Renaissance don't call ourselves very much ecologists, but I think we should start doing that, because the only way to really take care of this planet is to start going outside, to start moving our industrial development outside, the Jeff Bezos plan. So we could also say that we astronautic humanists are the true ecologists too, and no other strategy is really a good strategy, because it's not Greta Thunberg and not other strategies. And I immediately connect to the Alberto concept that expanding into space is not enough. Yes, in some way we could see that is not enough, but immediately we have to see that, however, it is maybe then the needed condition but not enough condition, remembering the Albert Einstein. But however, as a humanist, I maintain this simple concept that the vast majority of humans are not happy to fight each other and to pursue their happiness with conflict, by means of conflict and hard competition and so on. Competition, yes, but it should be a competition that doesn't kill the losers. And it must be a compassionate competition. So what I say is that when we give to 8 billion people enough abundant resources, the reasons for conflicts will naturally decrease, because our nature as humans is not that bad, it could be no more that animal behavior if we have the condition to develop our human properties. That's why I am very much convinced that the humanist definition is good and will remain good for many centuries ahead, even when we will be more than humans, because we can be transhumans, we can be cyborg, we can be many things. But however, to me, this evolution is an additive evolution, not a substitution of our human properties. Our human properties will remain, and to our human properties will be added other properties that can come from cybernetic, from many things, many integrations with the technology and so on. And technology, okay, I don't want to develop this because is another conference. Okay, let it be. However, I maintain that humanism is a good definition, also for astronism. So,
hey, listen, I'm sorry to interrupt, Adriano. I do want to say thank you again. I need to jump off here, but I do want to. I'm going to be reaching out to this panel. I think you've really started something here that is phenomenal. And Cometan,
thank you.
I think that there's an opportunity here to bring together these various thoughts, these various what do you call it, schools of thinking that sort of relate very closely into something bigger. So it's making me think quite a bit. So, but I'll save that for another time. And Alberto, it was a pleasure. And thank you, Adriano. I'll talk to you guys again soon.
Thanks to you. And I'm very happy that Space Renaissance is such a big house that can include also spirituality, and not only science and philosophy, technology, but also spirituality. We need that.
Indeed.
Definitely. So, Stephen, thank you very much for being with us. Thanks to Alberto, thanks to Cometan. And for sure, we will meet again.
We will.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. Ad Astra.
Bye.